Hello, I'm Dave March, the Spy Guy, and once again, StreamYard's green screen is not as good as Zoom's. I'm really going to have to do something about getting rid of using StreamYard. I tried to, I'm just going to blur my background. Well, whatever. Anyways, yeah, so I didn't do a stream yesterday. I meant to. They got away from me, one more turn on Civilization 4. And then I had a game to run, dinner, and then a game to run for my Delta Green group. So that's fun. Every time we go off into Delta Green and we fight. The players are fighting like unnatural, or a group of FBI agents fighting against unnatural horrors, and then we go and look into the Epstein files and we find that there may not be that far off. So I wanted to do a couple things here. I wanted to give us a bunch of different things, not just the standard one thing. So I'm going to start off with an update from Promethean Action and give my kind of thoughts on it. Promethean Action is this, apparently they were part of Linda LaRouche's group. He ran for president 10 times, and they kind of figured out the problem is all these major banking situations, and they call it City of London, and I've talked about City of London here before. So I'll just start to play here, and I'll pour my...
Stood before Parliament last week and tried to explain why he sent Lord Peter Mandelson to be U.S. ambassador when he knew that Mandelson was deeply compromised by Jeffrey Epstein. It didn't work. The media are now calling Starmer a dead man walking. And you can see...
Not just the fact that he knew he was compromised by Epstein. Now with the files out, we know that he was committing, he just gave Epstein financial details of what Britain's response to the 2008 crash was. Financial crash. He was and according to some of the files, he may well be responsible for triggering the run on Bear Stearns that led to the financial collapse. God. All these conspiracies are turning out to be true. It's just not the ones I thought were going to be coming true.
How damaging this is by how desperately the city is trying to make it go away. They sent out the discredited MI6 spy, Christopher Steele, to claim that the whole Epstein network was actually a Russian intelligence operation. The same...
What the hell? You would have been better off not saying anything than to pull this crap off. Russiagate.
Christopher Steele, who gave us the debunked Russia dossier, is now telling us that the City of London's dirty laundry is actually Putin's fault. They're running the same play they ran in 2016. But the real problem is the United States, where Donald Trump keeps adding pieces to his American system economic revolution. Trump's actions have emboldened American system fans like Warren Koss and Steve Bannon to finally enthusiastically explain it to the American people. Here's their exchange.
Hang on. So I want to make sure we name this as a construct for people. So we're dancing around. It's the American system. It's what Hamilton, and I say, along with the Declaration of Independence, something that doesn't get as much play that almost should, is Hamilton's report on manufacturers. And you had, Andrew Jackson was part of that. Lincoln, as a Whig, this whole party stood for this, the American system. And I kind of say this is what Lyndon LaRoche's people also talk about. Talk to me about the American system. Why is the alternative quite different than late stage finance capitalism that we find ourselves in this kind of cul-de-sac?
Yeah, so this is stuff that it's like Trump's entire plan is based around restoring the American system that really worked very well for America, worked well for France, and but it was the complete opposite of what British foreign policy is. And ever since World War II, the entire United States has been basically running off of, hey, Stoner, great to see you on the show. Yeah. I thought I saw someone was coming on. So yeah, I'm just trying to do a daily once a day show every day of the week. So that's what's going on here. Thank you for joining. Anyways, so we have them talking about the American system that was used by a lot of people. And now I've learned from another video interview from Crypto Rich that all the American presidents were assassinated by these people. So, well, I should say all of them, but there's a lot of weird stuff happening with that. So definitely, for sure we know that they killed Lincoln because they were all conspiring in Montreal here in Canada. We know that for sure, and we knew that it definitely an anarchist. The British were really financing a lot of anarchists, and the guy who shot McKinley ended up on a boat fleeing to England. And what is it? And I'm still not too sure how the British figure into the LBJ cap and JFK, because they was going to drop him from the ticket and prosecute for all his crimes. I'm not too sure how the British figure in that one, but maybe. I'm sure these rich bankers took advantage of it.
Lissac.
Now, Bannon just named the thing that terrifies the city of London more than anything else. Not tariffs, not the Epstein files, the American system itself. The economic alternative that makes their entire globalist casino obsolete. Mm-hmm. And that's why the empire's operatives are in overdrive right now. Christopher Steele didn't crawl out from under his rock to spin Epstein as a Russian spy because things are going real well for the city of London. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've been in the fight between the American system and the globalist system now for over 40 years. And I'm happy to tell you that at this point, for the first time, the American system is coming out on top. Today, I'm going to first show you how the Epstein disclosures reveal how the globalist financial system was rigged. Then I'm going to show you that the elite's panic isn't just because they're being exposed and caught. It's because their casino economy has run out of chips, and Donald Trump has called their bluff. Finally, I'll show you why Christopher Steele's desperate attempt to blame Russia actually exposes even more about how the City of London and Wall Street have done their very dirty business. Mm-hmm. So if you're up for the ride, please like and share this video. It increases our reach on YouTube. Lord Peter Mandelson was called the Prince of Darkness in British circles. That's because he engineered the career.
I love how the Prince of Darkness was literally trending on UK politics. That was insane on X. What is it? Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah, no, they were funding them. They funded communism. Or Marx. They were good. They were funding a lot of these groups, revolutionary groups, in the lead up to the World War I, and a lot of it was because they were ginning up to get rid of people. They were a big safe haven for all these little revolutionary groups all over the place. Including like Polish exiles and government and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Of Tony Blair and what the British Labour Party calls New Labour, i.e. globalization. Like Bill Clinton in the US, it was a con job, feigning concern to the lower classes while giving the elites and the banks free rein. Mandelson was the satanic brain behind many of the Anglo-American schemes, breathing life into what they called the rules-based order. To recap, the recent Epstein release shows Mandelson trading deep insider financial information with Epstein from 10 Downing Street during the 2008 financial collapse.
Right.
The documents suggest they are managing the crisis itself, seeking maximum profit for themselves and their network after their practices led, after all, to that very financial collapse. For example, Mandelson counsels Epstein that Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase should, quote, mildly threaten the British Chancellor of the Exchequer over the bonus tax the British government imposed on bankers' bonuses. You see, the bankers were still frantically claiming their bonuses after they caused the collapse.
Right.
Dimon followed through and threatened per Mandelson's advice. In France, the latest Epstein files confirmed.
Yeah, so what also happened was with those bonuses, because I remember being kind of outraged at the time, what Obama did is let them keep their bonuses and didn't fine them, but he directed banking interests into Democrat causes like Acorn and other groups. So if you just gave $50 million to some Democrat group or NGO equivalent, you didn't get your fine by the Justice Department. It was really extortionist. It couldn't happen to better people, but it didn't like the fact it was benefiting Democrats.
An extremely close relationship between the French-German head of the Edmond de Rothschild group, Ariane de Rothschild, and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. That's one of the largest and most significant banks in the world. From 2013 until his death in 2019, Epstein acted as an unofficial advisor to the Switzerland-based bank. When the bank came,
I don't think he was as an unofficial advisor, according to the email to Peter Thiel, and I'm sure other documents will show the same thing, saying he was working for Rothschild. It looks, from what we can tell, there are public intelligence agencies like the CIA, the FSB, historically KGB, stuff like that. And there are also, before that actually predate them, there are private intelligence agencies. Remember that the North used the Pinkerton Agency as their spies against the South. A lot of British intelligence was working through the Sons of the South, as I recall, which was this revolutionary group sponsored by the British within the South. And I found a great video on that a long time ago. Maybe I can find it again. It was basically on C-SPAN of all places, explaining how that revolutionary group outfit operated in the South, or it was an order of gold. It was like an order or something. Anyways, and they filled up a lot of the generals and colonels and officer class of the southern armies. So always a little bit of history in the show for you guys.
Under U.S. DOJ investigation for money laundering, Epstein arranged a sweetheart deal through his close confidant, Catherine Rumler, Barack Obama's former White House lawyer. Then there's the current CEO and president of the World Economic Forum, Borja Brendi. Forbes tells us that his Epstein relationship has led to an internal investigation and a possible fight for control of the World Economic Forum with the founder, Klaus Schwab. Schwab himself, of course, had to resign because of sexual and financial scandal. Alex Grainer has a very insightful piece about all of this. You should read it. He documents how the public operatives for London's rules-based order are vetted and picked. They are all deeply flawed. Their flaws are well known so that they can be controlled by the individuals and institutions behind the public show. Mm-hmm. Now, as if by divine force, the covers have been ripped off, and the men and women behind the curtain can now start to be exposed. Now, most American commentators can't make sense of what's happening.
What Tom Luongo calls the high table. All the richest people in the world are not Carlos Ghosn or Elon Musk. They're people who don't have names on Wikipedia pages.
Here, because they focus only on the domestic side of the equation. They miss the British chessboard entirely. The City of London, British intelligence, the offshore financial system, the royalty. That's the fight we've been tracking at Promethean Action for decades. It's what makes our coverage very different. And if you want to see the world that most people don't even think exists, subscribe to our free newsletter. The link is in the description. But the real bigger truth here is that Donald Trump has called all their bluffs. Before Orrin Koss went on Bannon to be cross-examined about Trump's American system of economics, he wrote an article in the New York Times calling out Wall Street and the City of London for the financialization schemes and crimes through which they have looted our economy. It's titled, "The Finance Industry is Gripped. It's time to start treating it that way." Mm-hmm. He says his original title was How to Save Capitalism from the Capitalists. Here's a couple of his money quotes. In a financialized economy, businesses become mere sources of cash, assets to be manipulated and then operated for maximum investor returns. Workers become just another cost, like lumber. Customers are just revenue streams to be tapped. It has corrupted sectors in which the profit motive was never meant to reign supreme in our country. Veterinary practices, funeral parlors, campgrounds, residential treatment services, youth sports, hospitals and nursing homes, even suppliers for volunteer fire departments. Consolidating and managing them with ruthless efficiency, squeezing the vulnerable customers and then pointing to the higher cash flow as somehow value creation. But
was it someone said if we get rid of all these, if Trump does reduces the thing down to 10% on interest rates, most of the credit cards wouldn't go away. And a friend of mine said something like 80% of Americans should not have credit cards. And I agree. Like, if you do not have assets available, you should not be holding a credit card. And so many people are in usury debt loads right now because of like the pernicious of, say, the credit card industry itself.
that system has now failed. It's run out of chips, and the establishment can no longer hide the fact. Its final burial is due to the American system of economics being wielded now by the Trump administration. It puts the emphasis on raising productivity, raising workers' wages, investing in the infrastructure and the science and technologies of the future. That means banks must be lending money for these purposes. As Secretary Besson keeps emphasizing, it's now Main Street's turn. But the captured functionaries of the old system will go willingly without a fight.
Right.
Their media and politicians censor the president's policies rather than explaining them to the American people. They're also pumping poison 24/7 to the American people about Donald Trump. Just look at these two exchanges with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in the House last week. He was there to report on the fundamental economic progress being made by President Trump. When the Treasury Secretary began to document the impact of illegal immigration on housing supply and costs, Ranking Member Maxine Waters called for him to be, quote, shut him up.
10 and 20 million immigrants.
Can you
Look
shut
at the housing stock of working Americans, and can you maintain some level of dignity?
Gentleman's time has expired.
No, my time has not expired.
Congressman Gregory Meese just went publicly berserk.
Oh yeah, she's a fun one. How does a person on a congresswoman's salary have a $10 million home in California?
All you have to ask is yes or no.
No, Congressman.
All you have to ask
the
is yes or no.
OCC is an independent entity, and I would know, Congressman.
So that, I take that as a no.
You traveled to Venezuela.
I take that as a no.
On behalf of
So just as the globalist elite crashes in London, out trots disgraced MI6 fabricator Christopher Steele to attempt to make it all go away. Steele, you may remember, is the author of the fake dirty dossier on Donald Trump, which was the founding document of the Russiagate coup d'etat in the United States. Steele, in an interview with the London Times, tells us in no uncertain terms that Epstein was the ultimate Putin super spy, running incredibly sophisticated honey traps in which the world's best and brightest were somehow all captured by Russian organized crime. If you didn't follow the ins and outs of Russiagate, you might think these lies are all new. They're not. They were part and parcel of lies about Donald Trump concocted in the 2016 to 2018 operation, which involved the CIA, MI6, and much of the American establishment. Steele's lies cover up the real scandal, which all comes back to the City of London and current British and American political operatives. When the Soviet Union disbanded, Russia was looted to the bone by oligarchs functioning under the control of the City of London bankers. Jacob Rothschild, for example, was the controller of the oligarch Mikhail Khodorkovsky, and that's all documented. Russian organized crime provided huge chunks of the looted revenue flow into the City of London banking center, as well as the New York Fed. Many believe that without it, the City of London bankers would not have survived the 90s. When Putin came to power, he ended much of that. But the dirty money flows from Russian organized crime continued into London's bank and offshore havens. 4 years ago, Chatham House, the think tank for British secret intelligence, claimed that it was finally shutting down what they admitted was Russia's London money laundering. It became just too ostentatious and just too exposed. So despite Christopher Steele's fictions, all roads continue to lead right back to London when you're looking for the corrupt and perverted authors of the dying system.
And I have other people who've made the thing that London is like the last bastion here of stuff going back to the Roman Empire. So the Praetorians is something, I can't remember who believes in that, but the Praetorian Guard basically fled to London or came there. I think it's much more later, personally. This seems to start with the Dutch having a bank and the restoration of the king after Cromwell. And that's where all this stuff starts coming out of London.
So this Saturday, the perverted world elites find themselves trapped between the failure of their system and the exposures of their true character and crimes. They can only manufacture lies and destruction. Trump's American system of prosperity, productivity, and the mission to create a better life for your children provides the escape hatch from this hell. But the American people have to know about Trump's policies and the system which has powered every economic growth spurt in our nation's history. The American system has to be hammered home to people ahead of the midterms. The key question to your congressional representative has to be, what do you know about the American system? Do you support it? That's how you should determine your vote. That educational mission is what Promethean Action has adopted as our most urgent task. You can support us by subscribing to our newsletter and joining our community. The link is in the description. Thanks so much for listening.
Please take a moment and
Okay, so that was that one. That was kind of the good news. This is like the big overall viewpoint of everything that's going on. But now we're going to get very dark and spooky. Now I'm going to say something about this video. I don't prescribe to all this stuff. I don't know if Rich prescribes to all the stuff this guest is going to say. It's going to be crazy. I certainly have seen this guy interviewed at other places, but he's never gone off on to this level. Joaquin Flores, I'm hopefully saying that right, probably not. But yeah, he says some crazy things here, and I don't believe it gets to that level, but he does.
Is in the Epstein files. Thousands and thousands of times he gets a mention. Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett has asked for Trump to testify in the congressional hearings about the Epstein files. That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Thank you again. Please like, comment, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up. And you'll find all the links for the guests in the description below. Hey, Joaquin, thank you so much for making yourself available. And
hey, how's it going? Good morning.
Going very, very well. So Trump is in the Epstein file, and in your post, in your Telegram group, which is at New Resistance, absolutely fabulous Telegram group, by the way. I check it every day. You posted something about Trump being one of the first to report Epstein.
Yeah, he was working this Epstein beat, in effect. I mean, he was involved in them. He met his wife through them, through this extended network. His wife, Melania, knows all about how the operation works. As someone who, from the former Yugoslavia, one of the
craziest sex trafficking hellholes in the world is some of the places in former Yugoslavia. So she's from Slovenia. So that's not quite as, Slovenia is practically in Germany and was from almost the beginning of that conflict. So it's not quite as bad as someone would say Bosnia-Herzegovina or Kosovo is like the worst of the worst of the worst.
Clinton projects, you understand what's coming out and the level and the degree of the information that's been coming out, and it's been trickling out and spreading among the population for 10 to 12 years in a very serious way. So we go back 2014, 2015, 2016. And Trump was definitely, in with these people, but he played a unique role. And when I say in, we're talking about social events, socializing, rubbing elbows. He had awareness of what was going on. He was also operating as an informant. So this is where it takes a twist.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me.
Okay, yeah. So I've had discussion with some people as well. This is the first time I've seen anyone in public mentioning this thing. We were all I was kind of keeping it on the down low. But Trump, why do we all know that Trump didn't have to pay the mob to pour concrete on his buildings? He was working for the FBI as an informant. And he could come out and probably get away with saying that nowadays. But, you know, in New York City, no one hates anything more than a rat. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, Professor Kenny, and he was like, yeah, I hate rats. And he's from New York, so he kind of gets it. So the idea that Trump was an FBI informant and got protection from that. And a lot of that, I've learned since, a lot of federal guys really in the FBI love Trump. The problem is there's two different FBIs. There's the FBI before Mueller and the FBI after Mueller. And Trump would have come up in the 80s and 90s with the very professionalized FBI that we saw during shows like the X-Files or all those movies that these guys are like the top G-men kind of guys. A lot of reform came after Hoover went away. It became a really professionalized police force. And though there was a couple of directors that were kind of goofy, the one before Louis J. Frey, like Frey was more like, he has some issues, but I think he was competent at the job. But the fact that he decided to personally take over like the towers bombings in in Africa, all those Al Qaeda attacks, it's like, dude, you're the director of the FBI, you're not a field agent anymore. You shouldn't be out there doing all that. Personally, this is what you have executives for. And if that's my criticism of him, that's great. That's like, and the fact that he hates computers and won't let them around him. But like, so what? I'd rather take someone like that than Mueller or God forbid, Comey again. Good God. So that is something I've heard, that Trump is a federal, basically a confidential informant for the FBI. And so that's that.
Pushback here, right? Because everybody knows Trump's in the files. There's a picture of him walking along with a little girl, right? I've seen, which actually turns out to be his daughter, just walking along, right?
Yeah,
then there's
right.
another something else. Some woman alleged that when she was 13, Trump sexually assaulted her. And then, you know, Trump's just a bad person, Joaquin. He's a womanizer. He talks about grabbing them by the intimate parts, and he's a pedophile.
Trump's definitely a deviant. I mean, when in the traditional sense of mores and norms, he's definitely a deviant, but he's a MILF hunter. He's not a PDF file. So, you know, I mean, everyone's got their thing.
I don't think anybody has ever used that term on my channel ever before. We're pushing new boundaries here. Okay.
He likes.
We all know that Trump seems to like them in the unicorn zone. There's that old show with Dennis Leary about firemen, and they have this scene in it where this guy's like, I keep going out with all these young girls and they're really awful in bed. And he's like, dude, you got to get them when they're 26, 27. It's the sweet spot. Trump seems to like them in the sweet spot.
He doesn't like them
after adult women.
Yeah. He likes, you know, women 25, 30 and up, you know. I mean, he's not into, that's his profile. I mean, you look at Patrick Byrne, for example, he's a virgin. He's like the 65-year-old virgin. So he's never married. Yeah, he's a very hardcore traditional Catholic, like ignore.
I don't know who Patrick Burns is, but maybe he's asexual. That happens. I have friends who like that, who are just like, do not care.
Everything from Vatican to I'm not saying he's like a set of ancestors or something, but he's a virgin. That came out with in the testimony around his girlfriend at the time, the Russian so-called spy, Maria Butina. So and it came out that they had never had conjugal relations. And she's like, actually, he's not, you know, a sexually active person. So he's a celibate. But anyway, Trump is mentioned thousands of times. Hey, Vladimir Lenin is mentioned scores and scores of times. I read somewhere 100 and something, another time 70 something. Can we go to the Red Square and exhume the body from, you know, Lenin's tomb there on Red Square? And can we get him to testify? Like, why are you so, you know, there's something called Blue Anon. And Blue Anon is a conspiracy network, so to speak. I want to say conspiracy network, and it's just way too funny. It's basically taking a lot of things which are spreading out into the population, similar to the QAnon phenomenon, right? So these are things that are spreading out in the population, but it's a low resolution take and they put a twist on it. So, this is where this idea that Trump was somehow a collaborator with Epstein. You really have to be blind to the politics and have no background in understanding anything about Tony Podesta, John Podesta, Hillary Clinton, Sidney Blumenthal, all of Clinton's people, the human trafficking, what their religious commitments are. People don't understand, Rich, their religious commitments. These people are Satanists.
Yeah, so this is where we're going to get a little off. When I said this part of the program was going to get dark, we're starting to touch the darkness. And like I said, I'm not quite believing in all of this stuff, okay? Like, there might be a kernel of truth to it, but I just think, certainly the Podestas are weird and have weird art tastes. But I'm not too sure I'm convinced of all the stuff he's going to get into shortly. How far down the rabbit hole going down? I don't usually go this far down the rabbit hole, but when I heard it being said here, I thought I would show it to the audience.
And I say this in a purely secular sense of the term, as if I was saying, oh, these people over here are Christians, these people over here are Buddhists, those are Sikhs. It doesn't mean that, Christianity is real. It doesn't mean that Buddhism is real. I mean, in the sense of true, but people really believe it and they have commitments and they follow through with those practices. There are also Satanists and they have practices. It doesn't mean that those things are real. So I'm not saying they're not. I have my own views, but in terms of edifying the audience and what people need to take away from this is that they believe it's real. They believe it's true. Those are their commitments. Yeah. So this involves human trafficking.
Yeah, I had a Jewish friend last night say something like, when he heard about Epstein trying to make some sort of Jewish super being, and he's like, dude, Ashkenazi Jews are so kind of inbred so much that I have heart condition, I have this thing, like this is it's hard to do that, and we're like no, it doesn't matter what you believe or what is true, it is matter what Epstein believed.
Human sacrifice. One of the deities.
Hold on a second, please, Joaquin. I just want to go back to something I said, then we'll go into the trafficking, right? So I did say earlier on that, there's this thing about Trump being this woman alleging that when she was 13, and what happened with that case, just so people know, and it's in the files, that I think the FBI investigated and they said they didn't find her to be a credible witness. And then she ended up retracting her allegations. Now, did she retract because there was no substance to it? Did she retract because she was paid off? Did she retract because she was threatened? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But there's nothing substantive in there about Trump. And Trump is mentioned loads and loads of times. But mostly I understand because Epstein wanted to know where he was and Epstein couldn't stand him.
That's
because
right.
Trump was the one who that attorney, I keep forgetting his name, who sold him out, who ratted on Epstein and also threw him out of Mar-a-Lago.
Yes.
So that's the relationship. And I just want to say, I did a video, 3 videos with Johnny Vedmore, British investigative journalist, and he told me at the
we covered Johnny Vedmore last week in one of those videos.
Beginning that he's in the Epstein files. And why he's in the Epstein files is because he's noted as a journalist of concern. So the way that this is bandied about, in the Epstein files,
people don't have any appreciation for what it fucking means to be in the files, because the files as a term didn't exist until November of 2024. So this is a made up term that we're now using. It's entered into the nomenclature. What people were talking about in 2020 or 2016 in all the interim years, or going back to 2008 with the original stuff, that when it first came out and there was first some legal issues when it came to light, this was 18 years ago now. What people fail to understand is that there were no files, except once you are building a case, once you have an investigation, then you have files. But what people were talking about is not release the files. Release the files is a blue anon trope that was introduced after Trump got elected last year, about 1 year ago. Release the Epstein files became a trope. The problem is that, of course, in investigations, in files, they're going to list lots of places that people met, lots of restaurants, lots of vendors, lots of...
I would say that the trope was there a little earlier, like people like Valuetainment talking about Epstein's Black Book or whatever. So release the files. Yeah, I think that was a bit more early in the lead up to the election.
People that they're worried about, people that they're talking about. So those names are listed in the files. People might get some funny idea that the files are the conclusions of the investigation. There's going to be some of that, but the files it can involve fakes. I mean, the FBI and, the investigative operation involves documenting many, many things. There are so many directions that people don't understand in criminal investigations that involve so many pieces of not just evidence, but parts of the story, and parts of the story that you need to appreciate what evidence you might be looking for, or to provide context for evidence that you already have. So this is that's what it means to have files. So yeah, Trump, obviously the Biden DOJ had this for 4 years, and there was nothing, they were remember running at the beginning of Biden.
Yeah, like this is all the ridiculousness. Like they had 4 years of this stuff, and there was something in there to prosecute him. They would have prosecuted him. But I think what also a lot of that confidential informant stuff that I only suspect, I don't know for a fact, is also would mean Trump has a lot of it's hard to get to stuff. Because here's this thing, here's a little secret about the FBI. I was reading Andrew Bamberg's book. He was this former CIA guy assigned to the counterintelligence office in New York City in the lead up to 9/11, though he transferred shortly out to become a station chief. He just kind of got frustrated with the feds or the FBI, but he would be walking in and he had like the equivalent of like an iPad, and this was in 2001, so it was late, and he's taking notes on it with a stylus, and he's looking around at all the federal agents, and they're all just standing there listening to the briefing, and no one's taking notes, and he's like, what the hell is that all about? And in the culture of the FBI, anything that's written down can be subpoenaed. So they don't like to take notes. They keep it all in their head as much as possible. So a lot of stuff that Trump might have, if Trump wasn't a confidential informant, they wouldn't write it down. It would all be in the agents' heads. This is why I don't like cops doing counterinsurgency or counterintelligence. You should, the cop mentality is not one you want to have when you're running your national counterintelligence service. You want something like MI5 or CSIS.
In his term, they were running,
so you can take notes.
Still, the I guess post facto impeach Trump and prevent him from running again. And you have the whole Letitia James scandal, the whole New York State nonsense with the filing of the value of real estate. If they had anything on Trump, Ray Epstein, we would know about it by now. What if they had anything on Trump, Ray Epstein from 2016 when he's running against Clinton? We would have known about it by now. The point is that all of this points back to Clinton. It points back to their extended network of friends. It points back to so-called, and I hate this, but it points back to their team, their side. I don't like the team stuff. I'm not, this is not what motivates me. I'm not a congenitally conservative person, but when you're talking about power politics and these little juntas, these competing managerial groups, who's going to function the empire, so to speak. That junta, it was those people. So what we now know, what the public is now starting to understand, is that yes, Epstein is at the center of many more things than we even thought before, or he had more interests, and he had his.
Yeah, right. I wasn't really covering Epstein in the lead up to this. I was doing other things, but now it's like there's so much out there. I'm going to start commenting on it, and it's safe to do so on YouTube now. But really, it's just like, holy crap.
Fingers on a lot of different things, from bioengineering to the pandemic, many things that Epstein had an interest in. Crypto, he was foundational in Bitcoin, it turns out, right? So he was, as I've talked about for years, Bitcoin was used by ISIS to do their transactions, and they received incomes and passed money around using cryptocurrency of this type, particularly Bitcoin. It was the only game in town at the time. And what's interesting there to note is that Epstein also wanted to create one just for them. He wanted to create.
God, if you heard it, was my phone. I'm going to close the door.
One in particular for the region, let's say. And I think it was terribly unimaginative or borderline insulting, but it was going to be called Sharia, which but anyway, Jesus. Anyway, so this is it's coming undone. And in 2024, I had been forecasting / assessing that the best thing for Trump to do in that election, they needed to bring back Pizzagate. They needed to bring back the Epstein stuff as a focus, because this is the real line of delineation. You have Putin some time ago, maybe a year or two ago, talking about in the West is run by Satanists. And the Satanists, he said, the vampire ball is going to come to an end. I don't think people appreciate, I think enough people do appreciate, I don't mean to lower anyone's horizons, but there are still too many people who don't appreciate that in our economic and social system has been predatory, has been vampiristic, right? That has been.
Yeah, that's what we got into with the Promethean Action stuff, where we had this imperialist economic system that has just been draining away everyone's life and money into stuff. And I was covering a little bit in the early parts of the ban and stuff, but I think we'll start. That was interesting to me, but we kind of covered the two parts on that one. The third part, which I've just learned, was all about like Bannon and Epstein were talking about this research center that he set up in Modesta in California. And he basically BS's all the way through that whole situation. And now we're learning from the files that they were up to, it was not some sort of advanced mathematical system that he was working on, though he could have been doing that as well. But it was also this very dark genetic experimentation stuff.
The economic, social, political, and military function of Western society for a number of decades now. I don't believe it's inherent. I don't think it's something that's congenital. I think it can be changed, but it has been something in place for numerous decades now. Here's the thing, though, and I think this is the part that people need to understand, is that because you have a lot of people that project their own middle-class values onto the elites, and that's a huge mistake. Or they project their own goodness onto the elites, or they project their own secular atheism onto the elites, or they say, well, look, they're promoting, Bill Nye the Science Guy and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and and the age of scientism, so everyone must just be a scientist and an atheist who's interested in colonizing the fucking Mars or something, or curing AIDS. No.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should not judge the rich by the same standards, because when you have enough FU money, I do, but not at the scale they do, you get into this kind of situation. I got enough money that like I'm not that worried about it. But like, yeah, this is I couldn't go out and get sued for very long, so I don't have that kind of FU money, but I do have some.
They have other interests. What we do know sociologically, historically, this is like for time immemorial, right? Is that in a society, the religious views of that society, in particular, the religious views of the elites, are a reflection of the cultural, socioeconomic foundation of that society, right? So if a society is based on hunting and gathering and, you know, getting to the water source and, you know, relying upon the trees, then they have, you know, animism. They have a pantheon of gods. You've got the god of water, the god of the river, the god of the tree, the god of the fruit, and so forth, right? If you have a system that is based on cannibalism, economic cannibalism, vampirism, if you have a system that's based upon political and social oppression, economic exploitation, or imperialism by conquest, right? Like, for example, Bush and Cheney, right? They were just in it for the love of the game, right? They just love to see people fucking die. That was their game. You know, everything else is just like.
See what I mean? Getting kind of dark here. It gets darker, but just the idea that, yeah, that generation, the silents, were just very into war by the sound of it. Got to remember, they weren't boomers. Those are my father's generation. And they had grown up during World War II. And they got a lot of programming and brainwashing put into them by growing up into a literal culture of war, perpetual warfare. So that definitely did have an effect on them.
Like extra, right? This was their trip, okay? This was their thing. What people need to understand is that the distance between the have and the have-nots has grown so great that in the West, the ruling class, we're talking about these managerial juntas and the very wealthiest, powerful families, have, in a sense, formed a breakaway civilization or a breakaway culture. And the mores and values that they promote are visible through, you know, the antics of any number of, you know, whether you're talking about Bad Bunny or you're going back to, you know, Beyonce, all these things are visible. Lady Gaga, Madonna, like you could trace this back in time, the growth of the acceptance and the moving of the Overton window to accept the foundational of their core beliefs, the foundations of their core beliefs. So what you have to understand is that when they went in,
Piers Morgan thinks the destruction of the English people is good as long as he can get good curry.
when the Clintons went into Haiti, we're talking about war on Haiti, right? When the Clintons went into Yugoslavia, talking bombing Belgrade, right? They consider human beings to be like the trophies of war, right? These are their philosophical and religious commitments.
Yeah, like Madeleine Albright saying that she was fine with 500,000 dead Iraqi children. And what was it? And just the results of like all the human trafficking that came out of Yugoslavia and all those poor young women trafficked around the planet or in the brothels in Kosovo. It was just like there's a lot out there that was really dark. But you know, when I hear some of this stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that totally happening. And then some of this other stuff he's going to get into, I'm still not comfortable saying any of that stuff. But here we go.
This is what people have. This is a growing body of knowledge that people have been developing and coming to understand, like I said, for 10 to 12 years, give or take. And there are people that have been following this for decades, but I'm saying millions and millions and millions understand this now. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Right. That's the elites don't regard us the way that you and I may regard other human beings.
That's right.
We're nothing to them. We're useless eaters. We're ants.
That whole there's that scene from Family Guy where Bill Gates and Bob Iger, no, no, it was a guy from Disney in the 90s. And they're like, hey, we could take the jetpacks. And they're flying over the Earth. And the guy says, hey, look down those people down there. They look just like ants. And then Bill Gates squints and he goes, they are ants, Bob. They are. And to a lot of people, and given what we're learning about Bill Gates, that seems to be a Family Guy ahead of its time.
Okay, now I did a recording with Tom Luongo and Alex Craner last week, and one of the things that Tom suggested, and Tom's kind of uncanny in many ways. It's like he says, "Oh, this is what's going on," and then I kind of watch it. It's like, "Oh, it is what's going on." How did he pick that out? Right? He suggested, and it makes complete sense, that Trump has played the Epstein files in a particular way, one as an assault on British government and possibly the European Union government, because I think stuff is going to come out there. And I thought that when it came out, that when Elon Musk said, "Oh, Trump's in the Epstein files," I thought this was a sting. They're playing this like a sting in order to attack the Democratic base and to expose the corruption and how this corruption runs through the top tiers of society and pervades our government, and we're ruled. We're being. I posted out a tweet based on a meme from Tom, which shows the Milky Way, and there's a little planet, and it points to the planet, the solar system where we are, and it says, "Here we are, here we are paying taxes to pedophiles." And by the way, anybody in Britain, if you don't want to pay taxes to pedophiles and pedophile protectors, go to notaxforwar.com and you can legally, lawfully use that process to withhold taxes. That's a protest against digital ID or pedophile protectors, and also against war, if you wish. Mm-hmm. So it seems that the way that it's being played, I think, is a deliberate sting.
Well, yes. What I had been writing about and speaking about publicly for over a year since Trump comes back, and you had this obviously staged issue with Elon Musk, where Elon Musk is, breaking with Trump over Epstein. And this is what created the foundation for the Blue Anon talking point. That's a Democrat conspiracy theory to get their low resolution conspiratard audiences interested in this. So this was classic Brer Rabbit and the Briar Patch this is an American thing. This is like Zippity Doo Dah. It's an old American story. So there's the Brer Rabbit, rabbits live in the briar patch. He's acting like, "Oh, don't throw me in the briar patch because it's full of thorns and everyone else gets all effed up when they get thrown in the briar patch." He's a rabbit, right? So he's like, "Oh, don't throw me in the briar patch." Well, you throw him in there, he's right at home. You can't get him now. So this was a huge, Epstein was a sting that Trump was involved in going back decades. What we have seen since last year has been a political reversal where you actually get the party of the people that are going to suffer the most from these coming out by getting them to believe that there's something problematic that's going to expose or hurt Trump in there. You had them demanding that the Epstein files be released. Mm-hmm. Now they can't shift focus away from it. And, they're going to make a Netflix documentary, no doubt, talking about, how, that paints this a different story. So there's going to be a movie version that's an alternate reality from the actual legal and social ramifications, the actual process underway, to sanitize it and to confuse normies and retards about what happened with it'll.
Retard. 2025 is the year we could say it again without shame.
Be like the Schindler's List of World War II, it'll be whatever. So, but of course, we see this is a huge move against the British, of course, but it's also against the transatlanticists in general. this is good for India. This is good for a lot of places in the world, actually. This is good for any part of the world that has been historically subject of the British Empire and these divide and conquer games that they've played everywhere with all peoples, turning brother against brother, turning country against country. This is upending a huge part of this system. The legitimacy of the crown itself is in question. When the Queen died a couple of years ago, in my mind, just thinking about where we are culturally, where the left, so to speak, and I put that in scare quotes, but where the left, the cultural left, has taken us on the question of gender, I'm like, the UK can't tolerate a male monarch. It's just not in our politic to have this any longer. It's not justifiable. You can have Queen Mother. You can't have King Father.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. I'm not kind of buying into that. The monarchy is a different object. I've been in the UK a couple times. The people there worship it as a religion. So you could get rid of this current. The House of Windsor could go, but they'll find some other branch to put in charge. That's just the way they are.
It just doesn't really work. And of course, you had Meghan Markle and the whole Disney thing. I mean, there are so many layers and levels to this. But I think if people want to zoom out and kind of assemble all these pieces, just understand this. Epstein was not really into this cult, this ruling cult, but he facilitated it. And he was providing a lot for them. He had his own thing. He's also a deviant, but he wasn't a pedivore. He wasn't into the eating children. He wasn't into the...
Yeah, that's where I get wait, what? Not into eating children? What? Well, that's about the far. When we get down to that part of the rabbit hole, I usually shy away from it. But I mean, I wanted to show because there's more analysis coming here from this guy, and I agree with that. But this is, I don't know if Rich believes this. I'm just what?
RTK, rape, torture, kill, RTK. But there are some things that involve Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin, like Frazzle Drip. There are things that...
What's Frazzle Drip?
Frazzle Drip is a video clip that has been painstakingly removed from the internet, but some of us saw parts of it 15 years ago or 10 to 12, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And it depicts Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin, there was a woman, and all you can really understand from it is that it's very low resolution, talking 240p, 144p, but it's definitely Clinton and Huma Abedin, and they're, eating her face.
Oh,
Jesus. Yeah, you know what, guys? I'm looking at Frazzle Drip right now. It's part of the 2018. It's all part of that. Okay, yeah. So the allegation, the theory claims that a snuff film named Frazzled Rip, and allegedly found on Anthony Weiner's laptop, showing Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin doing what was described in a satanic ritual. The claims, according this is AI, so this is Google's AI. Claims are false. Alleged evidence, including the photo, often cited as... Oh, wow. Okay, you guys can look this up for yourself if you really want to know. Wow. I just can't believe stuff like that happens.
jeez.
Yeah.
So this is the you've got Tony Podesta their fascination with figures like Jeffrey Dahmer. What I was trying to explain is that they went into Haiti, they destroyed the country, but they also took children. And anywhere that Angelina Jolie goes is like, if you can play like, Where's Waldo? You can play like, Where's Angelina Jolie? Anywhere in the world. And wherever she's involved in something, like she's going to save the children there, that's where you want to investigate. Anyone that's facilitating children, so you're talking about, a lot of times these are countries where the Sorosian NGOs are working overtime. It might be a post-war, quasi-failed state where the U.S. military has already wreaked havoc. They did this in Yugoslavia.
There's plenty of good movies on that if you want to dive into it.
The number of the people that they incorporate into their system, whether it's Marina Abramovich, or who's the gentleman that was an Epstein and Gates guy, Boris. Anyway, he's like a Croatian Serb, Yugoslavian guy. You have a number of these people. There was an artist, Biljana, I don't know if it was Marinkovic or Marinovic, whatever it was, but she's the one that
Marina Abramovich.
Well, there's Marina Abramovich, but then there's Biljana, who's an artist, who's the one that paints, Anderson Cooper's brother, being tortured in the drained bathtub. She paints a lot of paintings of children being tortured and murder scenes and children drowned in a pond.
And the Podestas seem to own a lot of this artwork, apparently. That's freaky.
And these are the paintings that adorn the walls of the Friends of the Clintons, the Tony Podesta and John Podesta. These are people that connect to Sidney Blumenthal, Max Blumenthal's father, and other people like this. So this is a very, very deep problem, that if you're talking about in the you can track how two very important social developments emerged seemingly in an attempt to get ahead of the curve on some of this stuff. For example, right as the stuff about the PDF philia was coming out, you had a huge normal attempt from legacy media and the so-called left to normalize something they called, minor attracted person MAP.
Yep.
Which MAP, by the way, is its own code word released by the FBI that's used to describe a certain type of child or whatever that they're trafficking or whatever they're doing, God forbid. And then you saw the development and the release of deep fakes and AI right as very important photographic and video evidence is being released, has been released, and will be released. So it's going, there are going to be ways to verify this to an extent, but it's going to create some degree of what's called plausible deniability among some people. Like you're going to say, well, everything's a fake. Well, you don't know what's real anymore. So just keep track that those two developments were big. And if you can normalize, like people say, hey, because it, like, for example, think about where we are with just homosexuality. It's not considered a big deal. It's like, as long as you're not dealing with kids or something. But think about neoconservative politicians like Lindsey Graham, who's in the closet, and people are saying, hey, it's okay to be gay. If you just come out of the closet, then they won't.
Yeah, Tom Cruise, come out of the closet. Come out of the closet, man. Just get out of the closet. We all know.
They can't hold that compromat over you anymore. That compromising material, the emails, the photographs, the video, whatever. But it might be deeper than that. But just think, for example, someone in his paradigm whose voters are, conservative Christians, from his region, the South, and what their worldviews are, right? That might not fly with them. But now consider all of these politicians if they had been able to normalize pedophilia, then we might not have, people think about that cultural transition had it occurred. Fortunately, there was pushback against that and it failed.
Yeah.
So, but this is all important a subtext and background to appreciating the significance of what's happening right now with the so-called Epstein files.
Right.
Okay.
It's a word that didn't exist, or a term that didn't exist until late 2024.
Yeah. Okay. Then a couple of things. And going back to, you said Trump is an informant. When did that start? Who is he an informant for? And also, I think at some point, everything's going to get released or exposed in some way. I just think that's inevitable because the snowball is just building more and more steam.
Okay, let me speak to those two things.
And then also, sorry, Joachim, are we going to see justice? Those three.
Okay, I understand that. Yes. So the United States, any country, so this is in my background in security studies, okay? Any country at its foundation, in terms of the core, the goal, the aim of a state, in part, is to guarantee that it has a monopoly over the means of coercion, means of force, okay? And a security organization is actually part of the foundation of that state. So without intelligence, you've got nothing. So think about a monarch. He's going to have consultants, and spies. It might be one and the same. You can think about, for example, John D or somebody like this. So spies, consultants, spies, intelligence network is the foundation of a sovereign power. In the old sense of sovereign. I don't mean a country that's a sovereign country, but a state institution, a sovereign state institution has an intelligence organization at its center. But there are different ambitions and different egos and different economic ties and different ways, and people are trying to climb this ladder, and some people are creating chaos in order to climb the ladder. Other people, etc., create divisions. So there are different power groups in the United States, and chiefly on the very most tangible, approachable level, Trump was an informant for some section of the FBI. But that's not very significant, only to understand in terms of the FBI and their scope, not as significant as the CIA, not as significant as the NSA. However, the FBI, despite being a highly compromised and controlled organization, there are going to be vectors in there that are, let's say, infiltrated by groups of people also in the upper echelons of the other intelligence organizations that are not part of the main power group. So you're talking about dissenting groups, okay? You have to, I want to answer this question quickly, but just think about just in terms of separate yourself from the morality of the question and just think about the solvency and legitimacy of a state or security institution or people that have been in the military and so forth. If you are known for killing people without pretext, right, it undermines the legitimacy and belief in the righteousness of what you're doing, and it's corrosive for a society. It's corrosive for a society, and for example, like someone like me, right, when my professor in security studies said, hey, if you want to, get into a 3-letter agency, like, you just let me know because that's one of the things that I do. He was constantly involved in this stuff. He'd actually been involved in the Patty Hearst kidnapping at some point in time. So
that'd be an interesting story to hear, wouldn't
it? Someone like me, right, might have become a part of the American system had it had any legitimacy. So once you undermine that legitimacy, now you've created another layer of problem because you're only attracting people, right, that have some fucked up ulterior motives. I mean, they're either woefully naive or they're tripping, and you get a
it's like John Kiriakou talks about this type, like if if a Japanese businessman wants, we do these tests when we're in corporate world where we're supposed to not use information that or take bribes or do stuff. And he's like, oh no, if I want the contract, I'm going to take that Japanese business down to the strip bar with $100 in singles and we'll have some fun. And like, no, you can't say that, John. And it's just said, like, you won't, they're recruiting, especially in the CIA or any one of these foreign intelligence services, they're recruiting people who have morally questionable views on things. Like, he said, one other time he was one of his early days at the CIA training at the farm, and the professor's like, so you have this guy and you've been trying to recruit, but he doesn't give you this stuff, but you really need to get the stuff that's in the embassy. What do you do? And everyone keeps just coming back to the idea that we'll just wine and dine that guy harder to get him to join. And then John's like, I sneak it in, wait till after nightfall, break into the joint, crack the safe and steal the paper. And then the instructor's like, you're right, that's what you do. And you need morally questionable people because you're basically engaged in any other a criminal conspiracy in every other country you're in. That's what you're doing as a member of the CIA or FS or SVR or MI6. You're in every country but your own, or Mossad. You're a criminal conspiracy in every country but your own.
A lot of people fucking tripping, joining the CIA and others. Like, I don't want to throw shade on anyone else, but I don't know how any adult male today can be talk about being a former CIA, just personally. Like, and it's like, well, what part of this did you not, or do you have a thing? What did you not understand about what they were doing? How did you believe in their core mission? I'm not talking about military. I'm talking about central intelligence. Like, what did you not understand about their core mission? Why did you think this was good? Why did you involve yourself in this? Or was this to help you pick up chicks or what? Like what?
Borderline sociopaths, not so true sociopaths, but people who have sociopathic tendencies is how John Kiriakou says. People who could possibly do criminal activity. And that's who joins. That's the type of personality trait they're looking for.
What is the story here? So you understand that. Now your other question. So this goes back to the FBI. This goes back to around 2008. But Trump had information and was involved with them since the late 90s, mid 90s, late 90s. When that power group really came into power, this is around Clinton. This is around Bill and Hillary Clinton as a central focus of this milieu. So this is like the middle 90s. Now, he met his wife through this network as well. But she had not been trafficked or something when she was like 12 or 13. She got into it as like answering a modeling call when she was like 18 or 19. So she had a little bit more of her own mind. She wasn't brainwashed, but she knows all about it. And Melania and Donald have been working together, so to speak, to undermine this cartel. She knows all about it, having been basically in, a call girl. I mean, she was basically an escort in this, but as an adult, as a consenting adult. But this is all from the collapse of Yugoslavia. This is all from the war on Yugoslavia. And one of the religious commitments of this power group, of this cult, people make reference to a god called Moloch, who's a god of war and human sacrifice. So basically,
Moloch, holy crap, we kind of went off the deep end again. Now we're talking about Moloch. I'm aware of Moloch, I'm in Ball and other stuff, but usually for playing game World of Darkness games. Not and also as a bit of a Christian, I just find occult stuff a little interesting, but I find intelligence much more interesting than the occult. But yeah, I'm well aware of some of these things.
To win the war, you pray to this god or deity, evil, this dark lord Moloch. Then when he gives you whatever extra you need to win, then you have to, give him a share. You have to do these things in his name or for him. And it's interesting that it's both war and human and child sacrifice. So again, that doesn't mean that it's real, but they really believe it. Like, that's what's documented, is that they really believe this stuff. So then your other question was, and I'll answer it quickly.
Are we going to see justice? And when I think that this information is going to expose
when this came out, and as I've been saying for a long time, is that this is compromat, and compromat is blackmail. And the problem with blackmail is, well, the good thing about blackmail is that if you become the master of that data, then you can manipulate all the people with that blackmail. What makes blackmail unusable? What makes blackmail unusable is if you prosecute on it. What makes blackmail unusable is if you go through with the thing. So it's only hanging it over people's heads. Can you manipulate them? So for me, it's not a question of justice. It's a question of removing these people from power, right? I think that people will get handled and offed one by one when there's green lights.
Yeah, that is certainly true. I've heard stories about this where the British, a lot of Nazi war criminals who did stuff to the British disappeared or had accidents or there's a suspiciously high number of Waffen-SS officers who died of heart attacks. So they eventually caught them. And of course, there's always the Young Turks, who were almost all of them, except for a couple, who died in other interesting ways. One serving the Great Khan of Mongolia at the end of the Russian Civil War. I've always needed to read that book. But yeah, all the young Turks who participated in Armenian genocide, almost all of them are hunted down and killed by Armenian death squads. Like, they were public figures, and that happened.
I don't believe that there's going to be like a judge that hands sentences to hundreds of people. These are people that are being marginalized from power. That's hell for them, by the way, which is already hell for them. We can't project our middle class sense of whatever onto these people. For example, even Ghislaine Maxwell in a whatever reduced security. The fact that she's there, like, many inmates would love to be in that type of prison, but the fact that she's there and that everyone knows that she's like, however, is humiliating for her. So it's all relative to what you're used to. These people are being removed from power, and the blackmail only works if it's not prosecuted. So there probably will be some prosecutions. I mean, obviously, we have to understand already is that fucking Epstein and Maxwell were both arrested, tried it. Well, Epstein before he could be tried, but they were both arrested, and Maxwell tried and convicted. So a lot of this is like echo chamber. The rest of it is compromise. So you have to use that. And I've been saying this for a while, and I said this a year ago when people were saying, why don't they, release all the information and go after them? It's like, because you can't actually weaponize that blackmail if you prosecute on it. Yeah. So, and also whatever you release, you can't prosecute on, because you're going to have jury contamination. Like, that's what the whole discovery process is. Like, you have to make charges on someone, and then you release, then it becomes a matter of public record. What are the information that those charges are based on? You don't just, it's like, it might be fucking interesting to people, or they just want to know, but don't let your fucking curiosity kill the case. You see what I mean? Like, it's more important that so that's to understand broadly, both how blackmail works, compromise. Epstein's ex-girlfriend, said Epstein was not really into this stuff, but he was also collecting compromise, right? So many of these emails where you see him saying, send me 25 million for using my investment algorithm. No, that's like 25 million because I've got pictures of you killing somebody or whatever. Like, you can call it an investment algorithm or whatever you want. That's just what you see in an email. But anytime you see Epstein involved in transactions, it might seem like it's about something else. It's because he's got the goods on you.
Yeah. Okay, absolutely fascinating. Absolutely love your take on this.
Okay, so that was that. definitely some of the explanations on what was going on with the Epstein files and that kind of stuff. So I've been broadcasting for a good nearly an hour and a half now, and I want to thank for all those who stopped by to say hello and or will watch this in the future. To be sure to come on by and hang out and see more of it. So anyways, as I always end these videos, please like, share, subscribe if you want to see more. And hopefully one day I'm definitely looking into getting something better than StreamYard, since StreamYard is the free StreamYard's just charging too much for someone who's not making any money doing this. Okay. Bye-bye.